Hi. On the workbench at the moment, I've got this car. It's a Tucker, which is an American classic. It's something I know nothing about, or knew nothing about, before this vehicle arrived in the post. A pretty unique luxury car. I think there are only, 25 of them built or something like that. An extraordinary vehicle, a rear engine vehicle, built in, I think, 1948. And this one's here to be radio controlled. Now, you can sort of sling radio control in more or less anything, but of course we want to do it sympathetically, as it were, getting as good a job out of it as we can. So what I want to do is try not to destroy the interior, if I can achieve that, and try and make it as functional as possible. Now, if I lower the camera, bear with me, one of the things you will notice about this vehicle is, and it's a pain, the wheels are stuck up well into the wheel arches. Now, all the commercial vehicles I've done, of course, the wheel arches are well higher, or reasonably higher, than the wheels themselves. Now, that means we can steer the front wheels without any great problem, and we can have our nice rocking axle and steer at the same time. This is going to pose a lot more of a problem. First of all, getting these to steer in the first place without going crunchy into the bodywork. Now, I know the real thing achieved it, but I wouldn't mind betting it was pretty close, and the springing in the upper region of travel was probably fairly tight, and in model form it's going to be more complicated, because of course any bumps on the road surface tend to be more exaggerated. It'll be more the equivalent of the real thing going off-road, which of course the real thing was not intended to go off-road. So my normal technique of having a simple beam axle like this, which rocks, pivots, so one side goes down to drop into a pothole and the other side rises, and vice versa, may not work with this. It's fine when it's going in a straight line, but if it happens when it's going around a corner and you've got a lock on, then the wheel that rises I expect to instantly foul the bodywork. So although I will experiment with a plain rocking axle, I expect it to be problematic, and I expect to run into trouble. So I'm looking at a new form of axle, which I'll go into detail later on, see if it works. The humming in the background you can hear is my 3D printer, which is printing up a prototype of a new axle and housing assembly for the new axle. So we'll see how that goes. But that's the normal axle assembly for this car that we may or may not be able to use. I made it up just in case, but it'll do for testing at any rate. And you can see, hope you can see, the flanged ball races on the stub axles and the steering arm there, and you can see this nickel silver wire which is bent over at the end and forms the kingpin. So it's this nickel silver that takes the vertical load. And what is missing off this, of course, is the track rod, which keeps the two stub axles working in tandem. And these are inclined to form the correct Ackerman steering. So that's that. We have an axle built, even though that axle may not be the one that goes into the car. This vehicle itself, it's a fairly cheap die-cast model. There aren't any first-class models available. If there were, we would be using one. But this is a fairly average model of what is available. What I've done already is sort of put some black in the grills to emphasise them all the way round. It brings them out a bit, and I've also given the paintwork a bit of a go, as I do with all models. 2000 grit wet and dry, used wet, and then buffed it up. And it's a subtle difference, but it is a difference, and it flats the thing down and gives it a more scale appearance and gets rid of quite a few bumps that you get in model paintwork, and it just helps give a little bit more realism to the model. So we've done that already. There is a bit more to do on the bodywork, but I'll probably be leaving that till later. I've also split the thing so we can get on with a bit of work. I need to make what room I can within the body, even to the extent of grinding off the identification writing, because this here is very precious space. There will be a servo. This is a servo for the steering, which will have to go in here, and that is going to be very tight. Its exact orientation I don't know yet. This sort of job, one works out one problem at a time. If I tried to solve everything in one go, the job just wouldn't get done. So one problem at a time, trying to look ahead and make sure I don't make problems for myself further down the line. But yeah, we deal with one impossible problem at a time. So that's the body. As I say, a little bit more to do on that. We need to do something with the door handles and the windscreen wipers in particular. But that's that. The chassis, it's got a full interior, moulded interior. We want to preserve that. We can touch up a few details to make that look a little bit better when the time comes, assuming there's anything left of it. The back end, I've already had the wheels off and opened out the bores in the wheels and fitted a new axle to 2mm diameter. The old one was about 1.2mm, but it's now got 2mm diameter axle, and we've got a bevel gear on there, which may end up there. I may move it around a bit, but that'll take the final drive. That's a mod 0.4 bevel gear, very small, but that'll do very nicely. And you can see I've cut a provisional slot for the gear motor, and you can also see that that slot is going right up to the front of the back seat moulding. I should like very much not penetrate that if I can help it. If the worst comes to the worst, we may just have to cut out the front of the bottom of the seat to get the gear motor in, but we'll see. I'm hoping to get away without that. And you can see there there will be a slot where I'm hoping to be able to get the battery in underneath this cover, and I think I can get a 500 milliampere hour battery in there, which will be good if I can. And hopefully also I will get the receiver in there. However, some wires will have to travel forward at least to the servo, and I'm going to have to find room for them, be it outside underneath or inside, making a slot somewhere or something. We'll see. So that'll be a job. Steering or front axle will be next. That'll involve cutting out this entirely, so the front end will more or less fall off. That's a given on these small things, and have to be replaced because there is not room for the wheels to turn in there at all, and the axle has to disappear in that, so all that material has to go completely. So all that's going to be a bit of a fiddle, but that's fine. The wheels themselves, you can see I've filled the back of the wheels with white milliput. Now this is shortly going to go into the lathe, and after I've measured this, I'm going to machine out, or first of all clean that surface back flush, and then bore out a hole for the flanged bearings to sit in, and I need to get this bearing as close to the front of the wheel as I can without breaking through the detail, and that's going to be quite a job. The important thing is that I get this swivel as far out into the wheel as possible. If one has the pivot back into the safe zone, as it were, as the wheel turns it travels backwards and forwards, and we want to minimise that by having the pivot as close to the wheel as possible. We minimise the backward and forward travel of the wheel as the steering turns, and that's much more realistic, and you tend not to foul the wheel arches that way. So that's what we're going to be trying to do, and as I say, it's a lathe job on the wheels, very careful lathe job on the wheels to machine them out to take these bearings. So that's my next big job, and once we've made the axle assembly and tested it for width and function and all the rest, then I can think about mounting it actually in the car subframe and seeing what we've got, and then I'll think about how to mount the servo and how it actually operates and that sort of thing. So I say again, job like this, it's one problem at a time, and get each bit working properly before proceeding on to the next, but always keeping an eye on the end game and where everything will be going. There's no use boxing yourself into an impossible problem, but you cannot solve everything on paper on a job like this before you start. If I tried doing that, I would never even start something like this. So I now need to get on and do something.